Please have a seat and we will restart. Now, we've been hearing 3 interesting presentations on this subject. We will be hearing 3 more before the discussion. And we will start after this coffee break with a logistics industry outlook from one of the major players in the industry. So please welcome up on stage Dr. Detlef Trefzger. He's a member of the management board of Schenker and responsible for contract logistics. Welcome.
Thanks, Mia. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be here. And for the next 15 minutes, I will give some insights on our view on the trends and the current industrial development around the globe. I will talk about the driving forces of logistics, 7 market trends that we have identified, and then why volatility is more a chance or can create more chances than risks. And we start with a Dutch proverb, or not, it's not a Dutch proverb, but the picture is Dutch. So if the wind of change blows, some build protective walls, others build windmills and make best use of them. And guess what Schenker has been doing for the last 140 years? What are the driving forces of logistics? And I will start 5,000 years ago with the Chinese walls. And they were erected as a protective means against the Mongolians, as you know. But they were also a good example of construction logistics at that time, given the means of construction available 5,000 years ago. Another very good example is Hannibal's Alpine crossing, 37,000 soldiers, 8,000 cavalry, and 37 terroristic weapons, the war elephants, took 15 days to ascend and descend into northern Italy. Fortunately or unfortunately, Hannibal did not make use of this momentum. We all wouldn't know what the world would look like today. But the distance of 14 kilometers at that time, 2,000 years ago, with this armada or with this massive army is an impressive logistics undertaking. And another one, and a very good example for an unbalanced supply chain and an unbalanced trade lane, is the Silk Road, established by the Han Dynasty in 210 or 220 before Christ. It was one of the first permanent supply chains importing goods from, at that time, the very developed Asian markets in China. And you have a lot of other examples. And the reason for that is, the reason for mentioning those is not to bore you with history, but to understand the driving forces of logistics. And the driving forces 5,000 years ago and the driving forces today have not really changed. It's access to raw material or luxury or exotic products. It's cheap labor access. Many years ago, for many centuries, the access to slaves, that has changed, but maybe we have modern slaves that we try to access, and territorial expansion. And while the ancient driving forces are still valid today, nevertheless, the means have changed and the methodology has changed. With internet, with communication technologies, these trends and these driving forces are even accelerating. The world has been Asian and it will become Asian again. And we heard this in the initial speech already a bit. And if you see the GDP distribution of the last 2,000 years, you see that 60–65% of the world GDP rested or was generated in China, India, and the rest of Asia. And only through the Industrial Revolution, this trend has changed to the benefit of the Western countries, Sweden, Germany, France, UK at a certain time. But if you look into this trend here, it's changing. And if that is a chart of a natural equilibrium, we don't know, maybe scientists know, but if that is a natural equilibrium, Asia will be good for another 25–30% of the global GDP for the next 10, 20, 50 years. So we cannot build protective walls. We have to make we have to identify our chances. We have to make best use out of that. And that is then my focus for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Let's look at some of the major market trends. And as I said, we have identified 7 market trends. And I start, not a surprise to you, with the growth of emerging markets. And some statistics. Asia's commercial service exports grew by 22% in 2010. EU commercial service exports grew in 2010 by 4%. Yes, the base is different, but the growth is somewhere else in the world, in Europe. India's and China's annual export grew by 32, respectively 32%. The global export growth in 2010, 7% around the globe. We have growth drivers like oil and gas and the access to carrier capacity directly connected. And we have a lapse of trading barriers, bilateral agreements increasingly, EU, Asian NAFTA markets, and CIS also not to be forgotten. And a trend of a re-regionalization. So while we were discussing second-tier cities until 2-3 years ago, Tianjin, for example, the whole wave has been moving west, and again, driven by the driving forces of logistics, the low labor costs in the west of China. The same is true for India. Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore are not the places multinational companies tend to invest anymore. We are looking at Pune, Hyderabad, and other places, and even that trend is almost over. So the third-tier cities become more and more important. And there is a very important trend of urbanization that has an impact on our industry as well. While in 1950, 71% of the population, the world population, lived in a rural environment. This year we have 50% in an urban and 50% in a rural environment. And in 2050 we expect 71%, so a reverse situation, 71% of the global population in an urban environment. Yes, the cities are growing as well. What was rural 20 years ago is now part of a city, but it has an impact on our supply chain and our customer demands and the future design of logistics solutions. And also mentioned by the first speaker, we see huge intra-regional markets developing and growing, sometimes faster than others. And I start with the European market. 65% of the EU exports went into the EU. The same is true for intra-Asia, but also intra-LATAM is growing fast, and also intra-NAFTA. And the second trend, the demographical transition. In 1900, 25% of the world population were Europeans or Western origin. In 2000, only 12%, and it is expected by 1950 that less than 6% are of European or Western descent. That has an impact on purchasing patterns, that has an impact on our supply chain requirements, and that will impact also our customers and the industry. The third trend, we see a strong fluctuation in world trade. And that is driven by commodity markets very much, and also in the uneven trade flows around the globe. Asia westbound is dominant. The question is, what is our answer to that? How can we come up with solutions? And it has an impact on a lot of the carriers, and therefore also on us. And we might hear more about that later on. The fourth trend, and that is a very strong trend that is even accelerating, outsourcing is growing above GDP plus inflation rate in many markets. 50% of the global logistics market growth until 2015 comes out of Asia, and it's driven by outsourcing. It's not only driven by organic growth of existing outsourced logistics activities, but mainly driven by outsourcing as well. copy and paste of Western established outsourced solutions is a standard in Asia. And that demands a strong integration of 3PLs into manufacturing structures much more than in the past, and also into trade flows and supply chain patterns. The fifth trend, and that sounds contradictory, but you will make up your mind yourself. We see individual but standardized solutions per OEM. While in the past you had very individual solutions even for a single OEM in different parts of the world, today we see that OEMs standardize but custom made for their own organization. And that is a challenge for us because we miss the scaling effect, or we only can generate scaling effects with the specific OEM. The closer we get into the production and manufacturing organization, the better we can generate an additional value add for the OEM. And then already mentioned today, green and lean, or lean and green, and Sweden has been in the 1970s, but Sweden has been a spearhead in that respect for many decades. But green and lean is also a topic in Asia. Even if they per se don't buy lean and green, but in cities like Jakarta or Nanjing, without alternative solutions, without the saving of utilities and the reduction of waste, these cities cannot continue to grow anymore. So it's a topic around the globe, and we all need to develop answers for that. And also Schenker, I'm happy to say, has a long-lasting history also in Sweden in that respect. And then the seventh trend, and that leads to my third topic, the seventh trend is volatility. We see an increasing volatility, and the world becomes more and more unpredictable. Historical oil price. In 2008, I think it was in April 2008, we saw the highest oil price ever at that time, and in the same year, the lowest oil price for 12 or 14 years. And that was unforeseeable, and no scientific model would have been able to forecast such a development. The world merchandise exports grow 4 times faster than the world GDP. Also, that speaks for a new trend that has an impact on our industry. You know about unemployment rates, also that has been mentioned today. We have doubling of unemployment rates in the US in 2 years, in Spain and Greece, more than doubling in 4 years, and we have unemployment rates in many European countries and some Latin countries in the youth up to 50%. And that impacts our future customers, your future customers if you are coming from the production or the industry or trading, and also procurement and purchasing patterns of the future. Also, another trend that shows the volatility, while in the past the euro and the US dollar were regarded as being very strong currencies, the RMB in the crisis, through external steering and influences, was or has been seen as a very robust currency. And coming to production now, we see an ever-increasing diversity of variants. Car manufacturers, I don't know that well about truck manufacturers, but car manufacturers tend to have 1.2 million variants per model, and that has a certain demand on our blind feeding production supply, but also spare parts and aftermarket services. The same is true for textile industry. Postponement is a keyword here. So white t-shirts, you know, all these examples are produced somewhere in Bangladesh, are then shipped to Turkey and color-coded 1 week before they are shipped to the retail shop. We see other seasonalities. In the past, we had a Christmas season, then we had a summer and a Christmas season. Now we have every 6 weeks, 8 weeks a season, especially in the textile industry. And we have special seasons and unforeseeable peaks. The launching of an iPad in May would not have been thinkable 10 years ago, and the same flash mob hypes with Hello Kitty, for example, that happened a couple of months ago. Business in today's environment becomes much more unstable and more volatile than 20, 30 years ago, but it is a chance. And why it is a chance, I would like to show on the next couple of slides. Postponement services, I have mentioned that, is the answer to many of the volatile demands. So no big stock keeping, although I'm responsible for contract logistics, I think the trend of warehousing is going down. We can only grow with outsourcing, additional outsourcing. Postponement of inbound to production, but also spares, stock keeping, and also customization, localization very late in the supply chain. One example, high-tech industry, the cabling for Sweden or the cabling for Finland or the UK is done 1 or 2 days before the cargo is shipped to the market. And that is a typical service that is new or has been new for the logistics industry. Production batches have been significantly reduced. We are going down to production batch sizes of one single item. We have new means of procurement, supply chain, e-shopping, and shorter replenishment cycles. The production migration is moving on. While Pune was a good place to do automotive production until 2-3 years ago in India, the trend is moving on, and that is the case also in China with moving west, following the cheap labor and following subsidies of infrastructure developments in many of the countries. And we see new local niche players coming up, companies that have a local footprint, and as a global 3PL, we will do interface much more with the local niche players in order to have a holistic one-stop shop solution in place. But for us, that is driving a big cultural change and has a big impact on our solutioning for our customers. Let me finish with a saying, and Charles Darwin, you all know this. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one that is most adaptive or responsive to change. And that is the role of a 3PL, driving change for our customers. And Schenker, with 140 years of existence, we drive change for our customers, and that is driven by the passion of our people, the solutioning of our people, and the problem-solving attitude in combination with our customers. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. Even Darwin showed up here in Gothenburg today. Thank you, Dr. Trefzger.
Not in person.
Yes. Now, I will just in a minute open up for your questions. I will just ask you, you have been talking about China, the other presenters have also been talking about China. How big is China for Schenker as a market today?
China is one of the biggest markets for Schenker. We employ more than 6,000 people in China. I don't even know the number of offices. I think we have more than 35 or 40 offices in China, and we move west as fast as our customers move west. Right. Yeah? And we have been in China more than 40 years, and we celebrate in a lot of those markets in Asia the 50 years anniversary. So Australia this year in autumn has a 50 years anniversary. We celebrated in Argentina 50 years anniversary. In many of those markets we have been active in for half a decade.
So China is already a big market for you. Now we will ask you, with these keypads, how important is China for your business today? So keep this question for today. We'll do a follow-up question later. Negligible, low, medium, high, or extreme?
Yeah,
please give your vote. Now, what do you think the answer will be?
High. On average, high. For us, it's extreme.
Okay, for you it's extreme, and you think the answer here will be high. On average, we'll see. Yes, you were right. 46% high. So you're a bit beforehand then.
I hope so.
You hope so?
We have to set the trend and support the trend.
You've been in China for a long time, you say, and if you're looking forward, do you think China will become more important for you as a marketplace in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, China becomes more important, but it's not about China only. I mean, you have to be active in all the emerging markets. At the moment, we look very strongly into the CIS states. So there are other markets that are important and become important, and again, the driving forces of logistics apply here as well. Access to raw material, Africa, 50% of the average raw materials are in the African ground. CIS states with oil and gas. So there are a lot of driving forces that are still applicable today, and we try to be in those markets. We are active in 128 countries right now, so 40, 50 more to go.
So you already have a strong presence in China and looking elsewhere. Now, next question for you is, how important will China be for your business in 5 to 10 years' time?